Can you do that again?
Yeah, this is the
Awesome.
way they everything remains in position in the adult sheep brain, but in human brains during development,
Uh-huh.
as the foramen magnum, the hole through which the spinal cord leaves the skull, swings downward by differential growth to move to the bottom of the skull, the spinal cord, medulla, and cerebellum follow it like that.
Okay.
And then that frees up all this space, for more occipital lobes up on top. So that's a difference.
Okay.
Another difference is that this still has the pia mater on. That's why everything appears to be being viewed through a haze, because that faint gray haze is the pia mater. But you can see through the haze, and this shows on the model of the sheep brain, that the pattern of gyri and sulci is different, as we mentioned last time. So the pattern that we have is a primate pattern, down in order primates. But other orders that have a convoluted cortex, that means with gyri and sulci, have their own different patterns. So there's one for carnivora, like dogs and cats and wolves and foxes and so on, and another one for hoofed mammals, even-toed hoofed mammals like elk and bison, and cattle and sheep for that matter as well. And then a different one for odd-toed hoofed mammals like horses and rhinoceri. So it appears that the pattern of gyri and sulci evolves separately in all these different groups. Now, the majority of mammals have no gyri and sulci. The majority of mammals are members of the order Rodentia, and Rodentia have a smooth cortex with no gyri and sulci. And so do Lagomorpha, that means rabbits, hares, and pikas. And so do bats, Chiroptera, which means bats. And so do insectivores, which means things like shrews and moles. And so do marsupials, which means things like possums, kangaroos, and so on. And so do the egg-laying mammals, which are almost living on the knife edge between mammal and reptile. They lay eggs, but they do have mammary glands.
Professor, can you go over...
The platypus, for instance, and the spiny anteater, the echidna.
Can you go over this, you know how this one has all the skins and the spacing?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So
Cool
before
beans.
I do that, just note these other differences. If we held up one of the human brain models, you'd see much more development of the frontal lobe in front. So we have this vertical forehead that we have goes with a higher cerebrum and a lot more front of the frontal lobe. That's what's called the prefrontal cortex, the prefrontal area of the frontal lobe, which is where the executive functions are seated. So the forms like this that have a backward sloping forehead, I'll take the question in a moment, have very little of that prefrontal cortex. So in the prefrontal cortex you have linear thinking, such as inductive and deductive reasoning, free association thinking, like letting ideas bounce off one another like billiard balls and see what patterns come out, and long-term memory and attention span. And also the generation of a sense of propriety. So when they used to do prefrontal lobotomies, if you try to do one of those today, you'd end up losing your license to practice medicine and in the slammer as well. But when they used to do that, what they did was drill a hole through the roof of the eye socket, and they go through the meninges and stick a probe in and squish it around. That's called a prefrontal lobotomy. So now, besides having such things as losses in memory dropouts, long-term memory, reduction in rationality, and so on, they also had lost a sense of propriety. So there are people in mental institutions today that come out of that background who might do things in a common recreation room, just drop their pants and defecate on the floor. And so one of the nurses says, "Now, why did you just do that?" And he would say, What's the matter with it? I needed to go." And now there's nothing you can do about that because the sense of propriety has been lost with some of that prefrontal cortex. And also urinate on the floor as well.
So the question is, where is the brain versus a
Oh,
brain
quiet
aneurysm?
down. I can't hear this question. I have to start that over again. Quiet down, please.
Where within the brain would you have a stroke or an aneurysm?
That can occur in many places. Now, on that picture of where the gray matter is and where the white matter is, so between the thalamus and some of those basal nuclei, there's a zone called the internal capsule. It's an area where all of the fibers that come from all of this cortex for motor control and general sensation and so on, all funnel down to pass through one